Well, I suppose you kind of had to see this coming. A couple weeks ago we did a video, and I had alleged that this man needed to pencil a resignation. It looks like the Navy did it for him. You know, and I can't say that I blame him at this point. I watched that press conference over and over again, and when you contrast it with how Admiral Swift spoke, you can see that this man had a distinguished career as a pilot, and he was an incredible asset to the Navy that way, but some folks are just not cut out for certain positions. And I don't know what his future holds, but I think his replacement is a very interesting choice. This is a man named Phil Sawyer, and he is going to be the new commander of the 7th Fleet. This gentleman has a very interesting history. He is a submarine guy. And when you look into what he brings to the table, and you juxtapose that to what the channel has been talking about, I think you can probably draw some interesting parallels. A crew submarine officer, served as a division officer on the USS Bluefish, engineer on the Florida, XO on the Salt Lake City. He was also aboard the USS La Jolla. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I've heard La Jolla and La Jolla both. But shore duty assignments, listen to this. Operations Directorate, Branch Chief for Anti-Terrorism and Force Protection. Operations at Commander Submarine Force U.S. Pacific Fleet. Bureau of Naval Personnel, the Submarine Force Placement Officer and Assistant Captain Detailer at Anti-Submarine Warfare Training Center. Chief of Staff of United States Strategic Command, Special Activities and Commander, Submarine Force ALNIC. He also served as Vice Commander, Naval Mine and Anti-Submarine Warfare Command. Commanded Submarine Force. I mean, this guy is a submarine and mine guy. Now, also remember, the commander of the FITZGERALD, the XO aboard the FITZGERALD, had only been there a month, and prior to his assignment there, he was the commander of a minesweeper. So I think this is a couple of very interesting, very recent choices by the U.S. Navy in the Pacific. So, I mean, you can take away from that what you want, but I found some things interesting in the tracks of the both the ACX Crystal and the MC ALNIC, or ALNIC MC. And it goes to this, a lot of people are talking about, and myself as well, about how can these ships not see these other ships? I think they do. I really do. I think they do. I think they just behave in ways that the U.S. Navy is not used to dealing with. And I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. Because it is very, very strange. Now, this is the ALNIC MC, and I'm going to play this. This is, very quickly here. It's going to make its hard to port turn and hit the port side of the, the USS John McCain. I mean, look at that. This thing is just cruising along, heading into Singapore, and all of a sudden just makes a giant left-hand turn. Now, there is no way you can say, well, that's because she hit the McCain. No way. No way, not even empty. If the ship was empty, if she had wanted to, she would have just plowed right on through the McCain, and it wouldn't have adjusted her track at all. This was a manual turn. This thing did this turn on purpose. And this is, honest to God, for this to have occurred this way, the more I look about this, the McCain wasn't heading towards Singapore, and it wasn't crossing. It was coming out of Singapore. It was heading this direction. Because that's the only way you get that kind of a hit on that rear port quarter, that beautiful symmetrical eraser head shaped thing. Because even if she's coming this way, and you can say, well, she's turning to avoid her, she doesn't hit her that way. It would have left a giant scraping dent looking thing down the port side. This is a punch. This thing turned right into it, and at the very last minute, and this is kind of the theme, the thesis here, the cargo ships behaved in ways that the destroyers could not predict. And that's the key. Because when we look at here, this is the 1:25 in the morning point at which the ACX crystal was before she hit the FITZGERALD. Now, we had this gentle turn here to port at 1:20. But then look, right before the alleged time of the collision, I'm going to go ahead and get this going forward. Watch what happens. Look at that. Quick turn. She changes her course right at the end and makes a turn to starboard at the last minute, and they're saying this is the point of the collision. Because this is 1:33 when she's here. So at the very last minute, it was going this way, and then it flattened out. I honest to God think that the FITZGERALD, in this case, had a solution that the computer had decided, okay, we're going to sail in this direction at this speed, and based on what we're seeing from the ACX crystal, we will miss the ACX crystal crossing in front. And at the last minute, the ACX crystal completely changes her direction of travel and speed, and the computer doesn't have a chance to adjust for it, and the bridge crew obviously wasn't paying attention or didn't have time to do anything about it, and it was an opportunity, and the ACX crystal took it. Just like the crew of the ALNIC MC did. Now you can say, well, you know, the crew should have been paying better attention, they should have... When you get out there and you talk about, well, where are the lookouts? What did they see? These guys are trained to not trust their eyes when they argue with what the computer's telling them. And they're not looking at all of these tracks as potential threats. They're just looking at them as obstacles to be avoided. And the computers calculate solutions. They say, okay, we're going X direction at Y speed. And here's all of these other bogeys doing the exact same thing, and here's where we need to be to miss them. If one of them at the last minute makes these changes when they're in close quarters to this naval vessel, and these guys aren't paying attention, yeah, they're going to get them every time. So this is not, you know, the thing with the FITZGERALD, you know, it being at night, and, you know, there was the allegation of autopilot, and there was the allegation that the Fitz was running dark. None of that's true. You know, in the Navy report, they come out, none of that is true. And it was a target of opportunity, and they took it. And this is another one. So it's probably not an either-or thing. It's probably a little bit of both. You have to wonder how many times these cargo ships have attempted this with Navy ships, with crews that maybe were paying attention. We don't have a list of close calls. I'm sure the Navy's not going to provide that for us. I mean, how many times have these ships attempted to do this, to pull this little maneuver, and the ship in question that they were attempting to hit was able to avoid the issue completely? I would love to see a history and a list of that from the Navy to show how many more times that maybe this had been going on, so we can show a pattern. Because this is a lot more stark than the issue with the FITZGERALD. And notice that both of these ships, the ALNIC and the Crystal, just continued on their way. Half an hour later, this thing was all the way right off the coast of the city of Singapore. And the same thing with the Crystal, just kept right on going. I think the crew of the Crystal thought they sunk her. I think they thought for sure, because they hit it right in the middle. And the only reason they turned around is I bet they picked up some kind of a signal. Or there was another spotter crew out there, somebody that said, hey, she's still floating. And they might have been going back to finish the job. And realized, oh crap, you know, by the time they got back there, there was too many people with eyes on. And I'd made that allegation before as well. So this might be the case. And you know, if you know, you can't necessarily completely exonerate the crew of the Fitz or the crew of the MCCAIN, but you sure as heck can't hold them accountable completely for this, because this isn't something they've been trained for. They've not been trained to look at cargo vessels as last-minute potential threats. It's just not the case. They see them as just moving it. They're going to be on their course and you're going to be on yours, and just avoid them because they're not going to try to hit you. Well, that's no longer the case, because we've seen now twice where we can show they did try and did succeed twice. So it's a sad thing, you know, that careers have to be ruined because of this, and it's an even a sadder thing that we have 17 families that are without their loved ones because of this. It's just a new kind of warfare, folks. So anyway, thank you very, very much for the support. The channel is doing great. Like, share, subscribe. We will see you next time. Thank you.